Okay, Rosebuds, welcome back to the program where we come once again to celebrate our independent policy movement to bring power to the people. We have another special guest with us this week. We have another congressional candidate. We have Barrington Martin II from Georgia's 5th District. Barrington, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, John. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today in front of all the people.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun conversation today.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed interacting with you online, and I'm really glad we got to finally get together and meet face to face. Before we get into some real fun questions today, because I think we're going to get into some really fun dynamics, I really wanted to start with some of the basics and kind of going over your platform and why you decided to run in general. So I wanted to start off, what inspired you to run in Georgia's 5th District?
Well, this has been a long time coming, to be honest with you. It started with me being a paralegal for all my life and thinking that I was going to go to law school. And that was one of the first mistakes I've made in thinking that I was going to law school. So I X'd that out. And then essentially I felt that I was going to probably end up teaching law. And that's kind of sort of why I'm a teacher right now. But then I realized that I didn't want to teach law anymore. However, I've always been intrigued by the law. So then the next best thing that came to me was, why don't I just make the laws? And so being born and raised from Atlanta and seeing the changes or the lack thereof, I felt that I can come forth with new ideas that can just revolutionize the city and change the city for the best. But more importantly, I feel like I can come with the ideas to change our government and change our country to go towards a direction that everyone can benefit from.
So I got to ask, starting off in that law background, when did you make that switch in your mind and say, I'm not just going to focus on going to law school and have that, but say, I want to get involved in the political scene? What was that kind of inspiration point?
Oh, man. I think it was me honestly having the thought process that, the age-old saying, if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. And so I started noticing the trend of year after year, we will vote for new people or we will vote for the same people, but yet nothing changed for the common person. Things have only changed for the rich, in which they got richer, and then things only changed for the middle class, in which, as you can see right now, the middle class is getting phased out. And so like the people in the middle are getting poorer, and that range of people in poverty start to grow. And so once I started understanding that, I stopped having faith in politicians, and I felt that a person like myself could actually do damage in the government or on the governmental platform. And so I felt that the common person needed someone who would actually hear their voice and actually do something for them. And that's how I got here.
I think that's a great motivation. Honestly, I had a very similar cause in my heart when I was thinking about running briefly in the fall before other candidates entered. No one was challenging this big incumbent, this person who is very famous in our area for so long, and someone just needed to step up to the plate and finally do it. And I figured, I could wait around and see if anyone else is going to do it, or I could just start the momentum and get in. So I love that reasoning.
Absolutely.
Do you mind letting our folks know a little bit more about your district in general, the 5th District of Georgia? What are some of the issues you guys are facing there, and just what is the general characteristic of the district?
Okay, so the 5th District of Georgia is basically the Atlanta metropolitan area. It has like almost 800,000 people, almost close to 1 million, and it's majority Black. It's been like this for a long time. Of course, you probably know about Atlanta a lot in pop culture. You've probably seen Atlanta on Donald Glover's TV show.
I love that show.
And for a person, I'm gonna get back on your question, but I got to say this. But for a person that's born and raised in the city, the TV show does well in this authenticity of just how people are down here, the vibe down here, and just how it is. But yes, so. Atlanta, it's one of the biggest metropolitan cities of the South. It's also called, people don't know this, it's called the city in the woods, because you have the Atlanta metropolitan area that's in the circle, which is 285, and then everywhere else is rural areas, and it's like no cities outside of Atlanta. Like I said, a majority Black district. A couple of the problems, or a few of the problems, I feel like are infrastructure, crime, housing and gentrification, and the biggest one is poverty, homelessness and poverty. And those are the 4 biggest problems, I would say, in my district.
Yeah, and before I get into some of your solutions, mentioning of the show Atlanta and some of its authenticity, and Childish Gambino, or Donald Glover more specifically, really coming onto the scene, given that, what would you most want to be able to see from him? Do you want to see another album? He just came out with one, or do you want to see him get back to the show?
He needs to get back to the show. I mean, I love his music, but the show is gold, and honestly, it needs to be for an hour more so than 30 minutes.
Oh, I
The show
so
is
agree with that.
gold, you
It
know?
really is.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it's like one of the few times where I think it's like it plays it very serious. Like, sure, they get into some ridiculous stuff, but they're not trying to clown around. It's just going through the lived experience and some of the absurdity of it. So I really agree with you. So to get to some of those problems you kind of identified for the city, what are some of the top solutions you're trying to push forward to actually be able to address some of those concerns, like poverty, like housing, like infrastructure? What are the things that you're trying to push forward to the scene?
Okay, so let's start with housing and gentrification, crime, poverty, and homelessness. Let's start with those three issues because those three issues can be easily knocked out with universal guaranteed income. I feel that if we can come to a certain social contract with each other, and what I mean by that is acknowledging the fact that as human beings, as people that live within the community, we owe it to each other to understand that we all deserve the very basics. And by the very basics, I mean, the proper food, the proper shelter, and basically the proper money at the very basic needed to obtain all of those needs. And I feel that with a universal guaranteed income, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Championed this in the 60s, might I add. And this is my home. This is his home. You see how that works out. But yes, I feel that it just knocks out everything. First and foremost, like I don't know if I mentioned crime with the bunch of issues, but yes, with crime, a lot of crime is dealt with poverty. If you insert some type of equity as far as everyone having a fair slice of the pie, which I feel like universal guaranteed income is, in accordance to building with whatever their profession is, you knock out so many problems. You knock out the gentrification problem. You knock out the housing problem. You knock out the poverty problem. And I feel like that, first and foremost, is the answer to all of these issues.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you there. It's kind of like playing off the idea of like Maslow's hierarchy. You have to establish that first basic level of establishment before you can try and go on to anything else. And I think your point about the whole crime thing makes a ton of sense because, frankly, a lot of the situations I've seen is a lot of people will actually commit crime because at least a prison cell provides you food, it provides you shelter, it provides you a lot of these basics compared to being on the street. So being able to just provide that prevents the crime in the first place. So I strongly agree with you there. So guaranteed income, that's the first top priority. What are some of your other ones, expanding out to maybe like a top 3 or a top 5 that you really want to focus on?
Okay, so the first one, of course, I just mentioned is universal guaranteed income. Universal health care is also important. I want to package those top 2 policies under the term of a people's bailout because I feel like those 2 policies themselves give people the liberty and the freedom they need to make the decisions for themselves. Like you wouldn't have people making decisions based on like what they have access to. So for example, you get paid, you shouldn't have to make the decision if should you eat or should you pay a bill. That's ridiculous. No one should have to live like that. You have a lot of single mothers, you have who need that extra income, seeing that they're the only caregiver and provider in their homes. Not to mention, universal guaranteed income also allows women to leave terrible relationships as well because they're not attached to, or they don't have to be attached to the financial part of it. I mean, like having a guaranteed income it opens up everything, opens up so many solutions for a lot of the problems that we have. And then on the back end, when you add the healthcare with it, imagine not having to be tied to employment to receive some type of health care. That's one of the biggest mistakes our government has made, is making it to where you have to have a job to basically see about your health. That's ridiculous. The next thing after that is I want to restore democracy. By restoring democracy, I want to take money out of politics, insert democracy dollars. A lot of Andrew Yang's politics is in regards to that. I want to insert because it makes sense. For example, in some states, it costs $10,000 just to get on the ballot. In my state, it costs $5,000 to get on the ballot. It was a very, very tough road in accruing that money, but it happened. But the fact that you have to pay to play in American politics is terrible and it's not fair. It's totally horrible for democracy that money is involved. And that's one of the biggest problems in our government and our system today, is because lobbyists and the corporations have the congressmen, the congressmen have lobbyists and corporations in their pocket. And I hate that because it's not right. Also, Criminal justice, my number four. In understanding crime and understanding addiction, understanding all the problems that plague humanity in that respect, you start to understand that it's not the fact that people are bad or people want to commit these crimes, but it's because people commit these crimes because they don't have the access to things and they don't have the equity they need in getting the things that they need in their day-to-day lives. And I think that oftentimes, being in a majority Black district, Black people make up a fraction of the populace, yet make up the majority of the prison system. We have to change that. As you see, the thing like with the current situation with the Ahmaud Arbery situation, horrible situation.
Terrible.
These guys basically did a modern day lynching, and this happened the beginning of February, and it is the 7th of May, and they're still like at home, like it's nothing happening, And so I really want to uproot the criminal justice system because there's so many things that need to happen, and it's like the problems that we're dealing with within that, within poverty as well. It's multi-layered, and we never truly get to the foundation of the problem. We only just like put band-aids on gunshot wounds instead of just removing the gun from the person or the entity that's doing all the damage,
Yeah, I totally feel there.
The last one, because I have so many, I have so many term limits. I think that's important. I feel that politicians, especially in the House and Senate, in the House specifically, they live their lives as monarchs. They can just sit back and chill and know that like their position is going to be good, and that's not right. That's why I've always told people at the very minimum, I just need five terms to do what I need to do, and I'm going.
Yeah, I love that idea, honestly, because it's kind of like focusing on actually doing the job rather than just making a career out of it. The idea is trying to be a public servant. And I have to say, your top 4 priorities are some of my top priorities. All 4 of those are in my top 5. So I love the priorities there. And I think it's absolutely right that you got to kind of focus on healthcare as well as a universal basic income, because frankly, when you look at all the bankruptcies that are happening in this country, around like 44% of them in total come from medical bankruptcies. And so if you're going to just give this basic income, which you're kind of using for the things that you can kind of plan on, this regular periodic thing, a health crisis is one of those things that goes far above that sum that you're given usually from a universal basic income, and you're not expecting it. And so we have to tie that away. I actually think it's not like it's a mistake in a humanity sense that they tied it to employment, but I actually think it was kind of a purposeful sense so that people kind of had to be in this kind of workism where they are bound to their companies. And that's kind of what even the not just the insurance companies want, but any employer wants, is for you to feel almost shackled to them where you have to stay with them. So I really agree with you there. And I think across the board, those are some great priorities. But to actually get that done, I got to ask, what is your general strategy? First, in terms of term limits, it's a great thing, especially since I think of people in the House, you're running against one of the most famous members in the House, in John Lewis. Absolutely. I first want to hear, what has been your general approach of how you have been getting out there and trying to sway it when you have such a famous person running in the House?
Okay, so mainly I put it back on the person. I put the onus on them because I know what I can bring to the table. And being born and raised in the district and being from the city, I know what has happened, but more importantly, I know what hasn't happened. We don't really have to speak on what hasn't happened because I don't like to put off, or I don't want anyone to misconstrue anything that I say, because first and foremost, John Lewis has paid a debt to society and a debt to this nation that cannot be repaid. However, he also gave an oath to be the representative of this district, and that he has to be held accountable for his actions or lack thereof. So I always put the onus back on the person and I always ask them, so you've lived here, what major things has occurred on a congressional level that has had so much substance that you're just 1,000% confident that you can vote in the incumbent rather than give me a chance? And 9 times out of 10, they start thinking about things and their mind changes, not to mention, no offense to Congressman Lewis, but he has cancer. And personally, I feel that he needs to tend to his own health and tend to his own needs. And I think it's irresponsible for people to expect a man of his age and his stature to continue on with the work he's been doing when he's basically sick. Like he can't, like he hasn't even been like been able to speak out on anything that's been occurring lately, and it's probably been because of his diagnosis. So honestly, I want him to mentor me. I would love for him to mentor me, but I understand the scope of the game, and if that can happen, then the coins may drop where they may. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, and I feel you there. I actually think it's quite refreshing to have someone who wants to actually work with the person who was in office while recognizing that there are flaws and shortcomings without necessarily having to attack them directly. I think, as you said, term limits is a great idea because we don't have to just say every time to get that person who's a deeply entrenched incumbent out, we have to attack him and get him out. He just naturally comes out and he can have a comfortable retirement to handle problems, as you said. Let's say you actually accomplish this goal. You are able to overcome this major incumbent in office. What's your plan once you get into Congress to actually get some of these rather bold ideas through? I think you've easily been able to see, just like I have, that in terms of handling crisis moments, which it feels like we've had crises way beyond just coronavirus in terms of poverty around this nation. How do we get them to start moving in our direction?
Oh, I think it's simple. I think we have to just look at the history and look at our more recent history. Just think about the fact that Congress has dropped the ball essentially when the government has mandated that everyone stay away from work, and you don't allow people, or you don't give people any type of revenue or any type of money to pay their bills. Why not? Why is it that you sign a relief bill and the money goes directly to the corporations? Like, you have to take into account the facts and the stats. That's what matters most. The numbers and the clean and cut evidence that can't be argued against. And I feel that if my colleagues in Congress can't do that, then the writing's on the wall, And I think that I will lead by example as well. And I think that I would definitely state that term limits need to be a thing the first day, because I legitimately do not want to stay in this position for over 5 terms.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think sometimes we kind of say, yes, this is common sense. We have the numbers behind us, but sometimes they're just not listening, and we're not given a seat at the table, even for our newest members. How do you try and work with stubborn members? Like, let's say you're bringing the common facts forward. How do you work around it? Is it a hardball approach? Is it trying to work with unconventional allies? Like, what do you do when they're just not listening?
I think I'll try to be civil and diplomatic in the beginning, but then you have to play hardball, and then you have to bring their constituency into it as well to let the people know that they represent, that your congressman is not representing you to the best of your abilities. He or she is not giving you what you need to be successful. And so you guys, as the constituency, have to do the work needed, along with the colleague that I am, to ensure that your congressman does the things that they need to do for you.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You kind of have to first extend the olive branch and give them the opportunity to be diplomatic and come to your side. But when they're not, you got to be hardball, because we're not just going to bend over and roll over to their perspective and get nothing done. So I think you're absolutely right. You kind of have to go to their people and, start educating them on not necessarily just attacking the incumbent, but start demanding these issues that you're pushing forward as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think the last serious question I want to ask you before we get into some fun topics, I wanted to kind of hear what you think is the general metrics we should be using to evaluate congressmen. Like, how do you think we know when someone's doing a good job or not?
I think you have to look at, it's a lot of factors that need to come into play. You need to look at how long they've been in office. You need to look at the stats of where they're started in office. By that, I mean, you have to look at the poverty rate. You have to look at the homelessness rate. You have to look at, I would probably say, I don't mean to say GDP, but just I would say the economic factors present. And I think that you should also add into the health of the district. You should add into the overall well-being, happiness of the district as well. I personally feel like at the end of every year, even though it's a 2-year term, at the end of every year, there needs to be some type of report card that goes out to the constituency that everyone in the nation could read and know what their congressman or congresswoman is or is not doing within office. That way, it'll be a better picture come midterms or come election time to allow people to see like if they should keep this person in the office that they have.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I think it can be even a little bit more than that. Like, you can have a final report card, but,
Right.
just like we had in school, we had like progress reports. And so I think that's something that we need to have a lot more often as well, is just kind of like that interpersonal connection of saying, here's what we're working on currently. This is what we put forward the past month or so.
Yeah.
I think that's a totally great idea. With that being said, I'm going to transition into a little bit more of some fun topics, a little less politics. Let's have a little bit more of the personality shine through. But before I say that, fans, I want you guys to start thinking of some of those questions that you can ask Barrington here while we go through some of our own. So Barrington, the first question I wanted to ask, kind of a simple question here.
Okay.
What was the last book you read?
The last book I read, was actually a memoir by John Lewis.
Okay, very cool.
I can't think of the name, but it's his last novel that he wrote, and that's the last book I read. Actually, well, yeah, that's the last book I read. Currently, I'm reading a book by I can't think of the person's name, but it's like How to Win Friends or something like that.
An influence, yeah, I know the book you're referencing.
Yeah, so
I gotta say, it's a pretty special answer there that you kind of have researched your opponent and shown them the respect to kind of listen to their life. So I think,
John, I go in like I make sure all my bases are covered because you always have to know who you're dealing with at all times. Like I'm a very meticulous person, so I never like to go into anything and blindsided. It didn't mean to cut you off, by the way, but I never like to go into anything blindsided. So, of course, when I understood that I was going to be going up against an icon, a civil rights icon like John Lewis, I needed to read about him to the point where I know him like I know my grandfather, or I can see myself in his shoes to see what he could be thinking right now, how he could be feeling right now, because it gives me insight on how I should move during this election.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Any great competitor will tell you it's all about the mental side of the game.
Absolutely.
A lot of times it's getting inside of the opponent so you can kind of predict what's going to happen so you could be a step ahead. So I really like that perspective. The next question I had for you is, what's the last gift or compliment that you received that you really, truly appreciated receiving?
The last compliment that
or
I
gift.
received.
Yeah.
The last gift I received.
One or the other.
I can't even recall. The last compliment I received is that someone stated that, of course, they will vote for me or I should be in office. I think that means a lot every time I hear it, because that just means to me that I've been doing my job. I've been making myself very marketable, and overall, I mean, someone believes in me, and I think that's a very special compliment to get from someone, especially a stranger that don't even know me as a person. They just know me as a politician.
Okay. Okay, so my next question that I have for you here is I'd want to know, what's your favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Oh man, I hope people in Atlanta are watching this. To be very honest, this has been one of my biggest beefs with the cities because we don't even have any staples. I feel like people say like the varsity. Let me be honest with you, John. The varsity's trash. Okay, no one goes to the varsity. I wouldn't like if you came down here. You said take me to a nice restaurant. Excuse me. I would never take you to the varsity. Like I would never do that. I like this Ethiopian restaurant called Destin. That's one of my favorite restaurants in the city. It's very good. It's off of Claremont. For people who are listening want to know, it's amazing Ethiopian food.
I gotta say, I've only gone to Atlanta myself once beforehand. I'm blanking on the name of the restaurant, but we tried a couple of different places because I had heard from watching Atlanta, I had to try some lemon pepper like wings. And I gotta tell you, they are hands down the best wings I've ever had. They truly do it authentic there. Like I've had them in other places, but there's just something down there that it's just so good. So I always appreciate the cuisine down there.
Do you remember where you had it? Where you had them?
No, honestly, like I had a couple different places. I wish I had. It was like we were on like a layover from a flight and we were just like there for a couple hours. So we were like, you know what? Let's go into town. Let's try some stuff out. So I'm sorry, I'm blanking. It was like back in like 6 years ago or so. So I'm just a little hazy there. Okay.
There are a lot of good wing spots in Atlanta, and so like as quiet as kept. I mean, only true Atlanta natives know this. Some of the best food is at strip clubs, and this is strip club capital.
Yeah.
Let me be clear. I'm not a frequent strip club type of person, but like you can literally at Magic City, you can like call in and order food and just pick it up. That's literally how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the last question I want to ask you before I get to some fan questions is, I wanted to hear what some of your musical influences are that you particularly like, because I know Atlanta is a real heart of music, specifically rap in general. What are some of your favorite groups in general in the subject of music, rap or otherwise?
Yeah, we got to talk about that because you sent a nice little list that I want to get into. Well, I have like a musical pantheon that never changes, or it may change as time go on, and that's Michael Jackson, Prince, Marvin Gaye, and Stevie Wonder. Those are my top four. That's what I listen to all the time. My favorite rapper is Kanye West. I listen to Drake all the time. I listen to Freddie Gibbs a lot. I know I'm leaving out some important people. I listen to Nipsey Hussle a lot. I listen to my greatest rapper of all time, who's number one on my list, is Lil Wayne from 2004 to 2009. I don't care what anyone says. Wayne was the GOAT at that period of time. But to keep it Atlanta, T.I., Outkast, Future, Young Thug. It's so many. It's so many. So anybody that's watching this as a rapper, if I forgot about you, I promise you it's no disrespect.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There is just so many groups, and I think you went through so many that are important. I honestly think, like when I was going through, as you mentioned, I made a post last night of my own top 10. Yes. I really do think I actually slept on Lil Wayne. I didn't even consider him at the time, but now like I'm thinking about it, he truly has just such a repertoire. So Absolutely. I think that is something that I criminally underrated there. My top 10 is like some people that I really like. I'm a big fan of Kendrick Lamar. I think he's a real good like philosophical rapper. I like the production value. He's kind of like very innovative in that regard. Eminem, just because I think he's like one of the more technically gifted like people, not like a lot of the messaging he has or necessarily the production value, but his actual ability to have a flow and have a lyricism, I think is really good. I think J. Cole is someone who kind of is I think like he's right now a little overrated, but it's because he is so talented. And I think it's because a lot more of that production value personally. And then, I could keep going down through the whole top 10, but I think some of the people that are like, slept on a little bit that I particularly like, I do really like Lil Dicky. I think I connect with him on my personal story. So like the subject matter he covers, I really like, and I think he's technically gifted. But like, there's so many people we can name, and I'm also particularly a fan of a lot of the classic rock you were kind of getting to. I think is a really underrated genre for people kind of in our age range. Absolutely. So I really appreciate that in general.
I wanted to ask you about the Lil Dicky. Inserting in your top 10, but I'm not downing Lil Dicky's skill because he's definitely a talented person, and I frequently watch his show as well. But because I haven't listened to enough of his music to know, and that's why I was like, that was an interesting pick.
Yeah, I think it's personally his ability to be both creative on specific subjects that are kind of, more like at day-to-day life, we all kind of experience it. It's not like almost over dramatized, which I think the rap industry does a lot. It's kind of like a posturing effort. He kind of like does the opposite of the kind of an anti-rap approach. And I think his ability to just freestyle in general has been always very impressive to me. Whenever I've seen him on like stuff like, Sway on the Morning, I thought that was one of his best performances, even compared to some of his like release stuff. So I've always enjoyed him. And, I just kind of like his storyline, like of just how he came to where he is, I just relate to in general. Like I'm a Jewish kid. I'm around the same age. He was a finance major. I was like, I see myself in you a little bit. So it's, there's a little bit of a personal connection there.
Okay, so what about Logic? Tell me about Logic, because I tried to listen to one of Logic's albums, and if I were to ever buy it, it would have been a coaster in my house.
Yeah, I think it depends on the album. So I think some of his more recent stuff has been less good. But I've always been a big fan of some of his like early stuff, like Bobby Tarantino was one of my favorite albums of his. And I think one of the things that I think he does really well is he elevates just his diction in general, and he's able to kind of be kind of making it more advanced in the difficulty in actually bringing it forward. And I think it's just sometimes in the music game, it's like food. We all have our own taste in a way, and there's some stuff that connects with me, and it's like I honestly think the art of creating the top 10 list, I could go back and, in
And
1 month,
just
it's going to be a different list in like a month. It's kind of like, what are you right now listening to has a big influence. And I've been listening to a lot of Logic lately. So I think that probably slipped him up a little too high. I had him, I think, at like 5, but I still think I probably would have had him in like my top 10 in general.
And that's fair. That's fair. I just wanted to know what your thought process is on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think with that's all the fun questions I have. I think it's time to get some fun questions from the rest of the audience and hearing what they wanted to hear about. So first question we got from Nelson Orta. He asked, were any of the 2020 Democratic candidates satisfactory on policy when it comes to racial justice?
No, not at all. Not even close. And honestly, I don't want to I guess it's me being an optimist. I wouldn't put the onus on them as their fault. They didn't have any racial justice. I didn't get any satisfaction from their racial justice policy, but it's mainly because no one tells the complete truth. No one is honest when racial justice comes up. I stated this in my mini video put on Twitter yesterday, is that the very fabrics of America as a society, as a system, and American jurisprudence is based in racism, and it's been like that since the inception of the nation. And it's kind of like, once again, we just place band-aids on like deadly wounds instead of addressing the foundation of the problem in general, which is racism. You have to we won't ever move forward as a nation. We won't ever be able to give everyone the equity that they need in being successful until we address this one issue, because it stems from so many other issues. One big issue, which is classism. But I'm not going to get into that. But yes, to answer the question, I wasn't, because we just tiptoe around the problem instead of addressing it itself.
Yeah, and I think it is true. We have to call it out very directly. And one of the things that I was even disappointed with, because I would also agree that I wasn't particularly satisfied, is I really dislike how, when it comes to the idea of just, bridging the racial gap, it's always in terms of just, we have to fix criminal justice. And it's an important subject, but it stops there. And it's like, we have to figure out how we get the empowerment to actually revitalize these communities too, and empower people to have more entrepreneurship opportunities and really be able to, foster Black business, foster Latino business, foster Asian business in general, because, as messed up as the times were back in the 60s, and there's a lot of things we've improved on then, there was a lot more business in these communities back then as well because of the segregation. You had a lot more internal Black business because they had to serve their own community. And then once we desegregated, we had a lot of this kind of get stripped off by the capitalist model in general. So I think we have to focus on both ends, not just the punitive side and stopping harassing and, killing and imprisoning, but we have to focus on, okay, now that you're out, how do we make sure you're not just suffering on the streets if no one's harassing you? We have to make sure that you're empowered as well. So, Nelson, thank you for that question. I enjoyed that.
Very good question.
Okay, next one is from Hungry Country Ball, and you all probably saw him yesterday in the federal jobs guarantee debate we had. So Grayson's question was, would you support a law that says that 50 to 70% of funding for House candidates must come from their own district? This is like an addition to having a democracy dollars concept.
Right. To be honest, I see, I go back and forth with this, because I thought that would be a great idea, but I feel that if other people in other communities around the nation believe in what you were saying, I think that they should be able to contribute to you too. But I think that those types of contributions need to have a cap on it. I feel like if they had a cap on it, then I would agree with the 50 and 70% of funding for House candidates coming from their own district. But I feel that what state are you in right now?
Me, I'm in New Jersey. Oh, now I'm in New York with my family, but normally New Jersey.
Okay, yeah. So if you were running for office and I believed in what you were saying, I feel like that I should be able to donate to your cause, especially for one, I'm not a corporation, I'm not coming from a super PAC, and just me as an individual. If I like what you're saying, and I think that you would be a great addition to a policy that I believed in, and I know I need more people that believe in this policy, I would totally love to donate to you. But like I said, I think that donations like that should be a cap because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the person that's representing your district is representing you for sure.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think, if we were talking about more of a state or a local election, I do think we can talk about it just kind of a hard line 50 to 70% has to come from your district. But like the thing is, the House is a federal position. It's not like your leadership only influences your district. It influences the whole country. And so I think that, enables people to want to have some say and help people from across this country be able to run. And I do think it's kind of interesting of an idea to have like maybe just you lower the dollar amount total. Like, currently we have an allowance of 2,800 for anyone. So if you drop that down to maybe just like 1K, maybe that's an interesting idea. And frankly, that kind of allows the common people that are, working class to give donations without like these big money interests from just like the kind of wealthiest areas of the country, just saying, okay, I'm just going to donate here, all across the country. I'm thinking of like the Mike Bloombergs of the world who literally do this. So I 100% think you can't just say it has to be 50 to 70%, but your idea of just potentially lowering the maximum donation threshold is interesting.
Absolutely.
He had a second question, so I just wanted to follow up because I think this is also interesting. What do you think about the idea of lowering congressional salaries? He suggests 64K, but just in general, the idea of how do you think congressional salaries should be structured, or just benefits in total?
He may not like this answer, but I have a rationale for it. It shouldn't be lower; it should be increased. It should be increased. The reason it should be increased is that you're gonna take away I guess, the leverage that corporations have in coming and giving you money. I feel like that. I feel that if you were getting paid more, but no, actually, I feel that if you're getting paid more, there needs to be a rule in play where corporations can't give you money. Because I feel that if you lower it, all you're going to do is it's going to be more incentive for the super PACs and the corporations and the lobbyists to come in and say, hey, you make this much, I'll triple whatever you make. And next thing you know, like our entire nation will be corporately owned, and that's what I'm trying to get away from. So I feel that if you increase the pay of the House and Senate, then they have no reason to take corporate money, and if they do, we know what time it is.
Yeah, I have like my own conflicting feelings here because, frankly, you say I give them more money, but frankly, once you give them more money, they're still going to want even more money. We have like an average net worth in Congress right now of $500,000. And you have, just the idea of it just being when you're in office is not like the whole thing. A lot of these people, if you started to lower it, though, they're just going to do the favor, and then they're going to know there's going to be a job lined up for them afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really is a complicated thing. I really think it comes down to just focusing on the rest of it. I really don't think the salary is the problem right now. I don't even know if you need to increase it. I just think it's like you need this oversight of all the other influences. Like you have like the Kelly Loefflers of the world that are profiting off their office because they have stock while they're in office, and they have this insider info of how regulation is going to play out. So I think it's like, how do you do that other than saying you have to divest all your assets? And if you want to invest, we have this trust fund that anyone in Congress can invest into that's like a blind trust. Like, I think that's kind of where the thing while you're in office has the biggest influence. I just don't know if like the salary itself makes a big deal.
Yes, I don't think the like this. I said that just to answer the question because I think that it won't make sense. But yeah, the salary is definitely not a problem. It's the fact that the people that need to be representing the common person aren't representing the common person, and they're basically representing the interests of corporations and more than likely themselves as well. And in turn, you just get a country or a nation like we have today, right now, where the people are missing out on the things they need because their politicians aren't doing their job.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you there. Let's do one more. This isn't a question, but I'm still kind of curious for the answer. This is kind of a second part of David's question, like not the breast of thighs. I wanted to know: are you a wing, are you a breast, or a thigh guy when it comes to chicken?
I'm a breast person. I have to have the big piece of chicken.
They're all good, but I'm with you there.
Absolutely. Oh, wait. I have a question for you. So you say you have lemon pepper wings. Are you a drumstick or a flat person?
I'm gonna go with the drumstick. I think it's like weird. Like I think it's also just like it's more convenient. Like usually they're just so different. God, they're both good. It's like I kind of like will be served whatever, but if I'm getting the preference, I'll just go drumstick. Like I just don't think they make a huge difference. Like what are you have the preference between the two?
anytime I get wings, I always ask for all drums. I hate flats. I absolutely hate flats because I just feel like it's messy, and I don't like having so much sauce on both of my hands. And I feel like with flats, you have to tear it. Like no, with drumstick is one.
Hand food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So that's my thing.
Okay. And now David has a more serious question now.
Okay.
He wanted to ask you, what do you think about the idea of increasing Congress's side? We'll have this as the last question before we help people know how they can be helping out your campaign here.
Okay. Um, I've been struggling with this. I've been asking myself this because essentially, to be honest, I feel like the political process itself has been doing an injustice to people because, for one, yes, I was going to say that, David. I was going to get right into it. For one, the two-party system is archaic and it doesn't fulfill its duties as far as taking care of the necessities, the political necessities of people. I totally think that increasing Congress would it will allow better representation of everyone in the U.S. But then I worry about corporate influence on the government and with more people. I think that we would have to watch out for that. And I also have a problem with possible government oversight in particular areas as well. So I think that essentially we will have to find a middle ground where everyone can be represented because the two-party system itself ain't working.
Yeah, I am a personal advocate for this. I love the idea of repealing the Permanent Apportionment Act, which would allow us to increase Congress's side. The one downside I have to it before I get into some of the benefits is that, the actual chambers, what are you going to do? Build a new building? Like, how are you going to get all the new people in there? Like, that's my one thing when I think through this. Like, what's the solution? And I'm sure there is an idea, and they're going to have to start thinking innovatively with this whole coronavirus crisis. Of, are they not even going to show up? Are they going to start embracing stuff like Zoom? They can kind of figure that out. But like the idea in general of supporting this is, when you look at us compared to like some other international countries in terms of how many representatives we have compared to people, we have 1.3 representatives for every 1 million people. The next lowest ratio is Japan with 3.7. So the idea is that when you have more representation, you're going to have a smaller district size, which means that you're going to have more local interaction because there's a smaller voter base that you're trying to win over, so that a candidate has a lot more easy time. I know you've probably had to do this going through your district. If it was a smaller area, you could cover that a lot easier. Exactly. But now if it's a larger size district, it becomes much more money is needed to actually start winning in those districts. Absolutely. And furthermore, if you're like that wealthy person like Michael Bloomberg, now it's going to hurt your pocket. You have so many more districts you got to invest into if you want to try and buy it all. So I think that's an interesting thing. And I think it also allows just kind of more productivity into the system, like more people working on different legislation and kind of forming coalitions. So I personally like the idea. You got to kind of solve the first part. Where are we putting them? Like, I think that's like the first thing before we actually get it done. But David, thank you for that question.
Great question.
Okay. So Barrington, that wraps up our, interview here. I wanted to first thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed this conversation today. How do the people be able to help you out? What are your top priorities right now in trying to win your campaign?
Okay, guys, it's very simple. Just today, actually, on the Hill Roses, I would like to present my GA-5 initiative. And so, what all that is I want to represent District 5, but I'm going to start the GA-5 initiative. And that is, if you believe in what I'm saying, if you believe in me as a candidate, if you believe in any of my policies, I need you to give me 5 people. You can spread the word to 5 people that you can just either show on my Twitter, show on my Facebook, show on my website. I just need you to just pass around my information to 5 people and tell them you need them to pass it around to 5 different people. And let's just keep that going. That's all I need. I know that I would ask you guys to donate, but I don't feel right asking to donate during a time of a worldwide pandemic and a lot of people not working. That's not me. So, but just to know, I work for you guys. And so in order for us to win this election, I just need you to tell as many people as you know, but just give me 5 people.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'll probably be doing that afterwards. And, you may not be asking, but I'll ask for you. If you can, I'm not saying if you can't, obviously take care of yourself if you're struggling. But, consider throwing 5 there as well. It could be more if you have more, but consider 5 in both regards. But Barrington, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can continue the dialogue in general going forward.
We got this again, man.
We'll do it in a little bit more of a laid back format. We can start bouncing ideas because I wanted to show off your platform and your personality and do it like an interview, but we have so much more to talk through.
Absolutely.
But thank you once again. Thank you for all tuning in and asking your questions to Barrington again. Rosebuds, I hope you stay safe out there, and I hope you stay rosy. We're going to be having our next episode tomorrow. We're going to be talking about a little bit of a controversial topic. We're talking about Tara Reade, and we're talking about the whole allegations about Joe Biden. So stick tuned for participating in that conversation. All I'm going to say is a hint. There's more nuance there. We don't have to go black and white on this issue. But tune in for that. We're looking forward to it. And we're going to tonight establish our organization full time. We're ratifying our operation guidelines and we're going live. So I'm really looking forward to the team building up. And thank you all for tuning in one more time. Please, please, please do as Barrington said. Go give him 5 out there. Go share with 5 of your friends. Share this video too. Convince them to start sharing as well. So guys, stay safe out there and stay rosy.